Friday, the 12th of Elul, and we are getting started over here on the Chumash, August 20th. We're continuing with interesting laws regarding when someone gets married and other interesting laws as well. Okay, let's continue chapter 24, verse number 5. Yikach ish isha chadasha. This law only applies when somebody's getting married to a woman that he's never been married to before. Like, for example, like we talked about yesterday, if somebody divorces a wife and then marries that wife again, then this law does not apply to him. What does this law say? If you're in the first year of marriage, you do not have to go out into the army or be subjected to anything associated with it. You should be free to remain in your home. Shana achas v'simach es ishtei asher lakach, and you shall delight your wife that you are married to. And what is Rashi says l'chol davar, to anything that's associated. This means that not just fighting in the army, even being supplying water and food or repairing the roads for the army are you don't have to do if you're in the first year of marriage. However, Rashi says if you are being returned from the battlefield or not being conscripted to the army because you built a house or you're just betrothed, in other words, you didn't yet marry a woman, in that case, you don't have to go to war, but you do have to supply the water and food and repair roads. Less dangerous work. Okay, next pasuk. Lo yachavel rechaim v'rachev ki nefesh hu chayvel. One shall not take the lower or the upper millstone as security for a loan, because he is taking a life as security. So what we're talking about is that when there's something called a mashkin, like when somebody lends you money, you have to give them something until you pay them back to hold as a security deposit. That security deposit cannot be something that is related to food or related to your actual livelihood, because that's limiting the person. If a man is discovered kidnapping any person from the Jewish people, so if anybody kidnaps somebody of the children of Israel and he enslaves him and he sells him, that kidnapper shall be put to death, so that you can rid yourself of such an evil. Kiyimtza, Rashi says, you need to have due process. It has to be with witnesses, and we have to make sure that we got the right guy who did this atrocity. Verse number 8. Hishamer b'negev hatzaras lishmor ma'od v'lases kichol asher yoyru es kamakenim v'alvim kasher tzivisam tishmeru lases. You should be very careful regarding tzaras. Observe it meticulously, and remember, when you have it, you got to leave, and the Kohen has to look at it. So take the tzaras very seriously. And what Rashi says, very important, what does it mean do all that the Kohanim instruct you, whether to quarantine, whether to make, he right away says it's tzaras, or he declares him as that it's not tzaras, it's actually something else, and you're tar, and you're clean. Okay, verse number 9. Zachar, remember what Hashem did to Miriam on the way when you were leaving Egypt. So, you know that story with Miriam and the tzaras. You know how important it is to make sure that you take care of tzaras and you do it correctly. When you lend your fellow Jew something, you shall not enter his home to take his security. And you have to stand outside. Verse number 11. You shall stand outside. And the person who you lent the money to will bring the security out to you. And continuing on that vein, and if it's somebody that's a poor man, especially, you shall not lie down, sleep with his security. If he gave you something, a security that, for example, he uses, like it used to be, you'd give clothes. So if it was night clothes, you should give it back to him by sunset. At verse number 13 is going to say that. You shall return the security to him by sunset. So it's not just, you have to, imagine it was night clothes, you have to return it to him by night. Imagine it's day clothes, you would have to return it to him by day. When you're taking the security, and you could take the security again, but like the previous pasuk said, you can't go into his house to take the security. The security, you wait outside and he comes out and he gives you the security. This is all because you've given him a loan. Once he's obviously paid the loan, he doesn't need to give you any security any longer. Okay, lots of different halachas. Let's move on to the Tanya. Very interesting chumash today. Let's check out the Tanya. Okay, Tanya, we're starting Igeres HaKodesh. We're starting number 13. It starts off Marav Tuvcha Asher Tanafta L'Riyecha, and the pasuk continues. So the pasuk says, "How abundant is your goodness, which you have hidden away for those who fear you." And then it says, "Which you have wrought for those who trust in you before man." So it seems like the first part of the pasuk is talking about that it's hidden. This the reward that we're talking about is hidden away for those who fear you. And then the last part of the pasuk seems to say that it will be brought out to those who trust in you. So in general, there are two forms of rewards corresponding to the two forms of the serving Hashem, divine service. Hine b'chlal, oivdei Hashem yesh beis b'chinos umadregos chalukos. When serving Hashem, there are two types of ways, two levels, two kinds of ways of serving Hashem. And mitzad sheresh nishmasan l'mayla m'chinas yamin u'smal. These two ways come from the soul's root source, whether it's a left or right. Gevura is left, chesed is right. Tahainu shebchinas small, the left side, left root of a soul. He midas had tzimtzum v'hester b'avodas Hashem. It's characterized by concealment and contraction in one's avodas Hashem, in one's service of God. Like it says, 3 psukim, and these 3 psukim refer to 3 parts of servicing Hashem. Ba'atznei lechas, the hatznei lechas, somebody, they're all talking in a way of positive ways of serving, but they're just one kav, they're one way of serving Hashem. Hatznei lechas, like somebody who walks covertly, that is talking about doing mitzvahs, but it's talking about doing mitzvahs in a way of gevura, in a way of contraction and concealment. The next verse says, "Bamistorim tivke," in secret places he weeps. I think it's talking about the soul. The soul weeps in secret places. That's talking about doing tefillah, but again, in this way of gevura. And then the next verse says, "Kol ha'oseh b'Torah b'seiser," whoever engages in Torah study in secret. Again, that denotes a gevura side of serving Hashem in learning Torah. So the first verse was for mitzvos, The second one was for tefillah. And the third one was for Torah. But that was all in a gevurah way, not in a chesed way. So, so when you serve Hashem in this way, it comes with a drawback. The drawback is that it limits you to only doing it in what your normal, like what you're able to do. And that's what I was giving examples. Like if you're doing tzedakah in a gevurah way, then you're going to do tzedakah exactly according to your means, not even one iota more. Like the verse says that you should give 1/5. Oh, that's what you're going to do. And the same thing is with ukahai gavna b'talmud Torah b'shar mitzvahs. Dai lo sheyotze yedei chavaisay mechiyuv mufarish shechiv sa'ater b'ferish. L'kvaya itim. So the same too is with Torah study and any other things and all the other mitzvahs. We're going to do, if you're coming from the gevurah, you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing, but you do it all to exactly your obligation. So if your obligation is to set aside some time for Torah, you set aside a little bit of time for Torah. When your soul's root is in the left, in the attribute of gevurah, it leads one to act in a manner consistent with its character trait of limitation, so that he will only give as much tzedakah, study only as much Torah, and perform the mitzvahs only to the degree that he is obligated. So, I'm actually not 100% sure what that verse means, but let's continue. By contrast, when you serve Hashem with the right side, he midas hachesed, with the attribute of chesed, b'hispashtus, b'avodas Hashem, and expansiveness in serving Hashem, b'hisrachvus, b'litzimtzum v'hester klal. Hisrachvus means like revach, like with just without thought, just complete expansion, without any contraction or concealment at all. He walks expansively. There's no constraint to his spirit of generosity. Whether we're talking about with charity or with studying Torah or other mitzvahs, the point is that the person has a very giving bent to his soul. In that case, he's not going to be satisfied just with doing his obligation. Allah ad blidai, he will do it to the extent that the extent of never saying enough. Like you'll never say, okay, enough. No, he just keeps on going more and more and more in all aspects of Torah and mitzvahs. All right, that concludes the Tanya and the Chumash of today. It was a pleasure learning with you today. I wish everyone a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos, and I look forward to seeing you on Shabbos. Have a wonderful day.
Good Shabbos to you, and thank you.
My pleasure.